We're actually just getting, this is breaking now, a statement coming in from Vladimir Putin, president of Russia. He says Russia condemns in the strongest possible terms the attack against Syria, where Russian military personnel are assisting the legitimate government in its counterterrorism efforts. Through its actions, the U.S. makes the already catastrophic humanitarian situation in Syria even worse and brings suffering to civilians. In fact, the U.S. Panders to the terrorists. So that's a pretty strong statement there from Vladimir Putin, obviously very upset about the airstrikes that happened overnight. Will they respond militarily in any way? How much will they flex those muscles? That is the big question. And then how the U.S. responds from there.
That's exactly right. Let's bring in Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Fox News national security strategist and former deputy assistant to President Trump. You just heard that statement from Vladimir Putin. He didn't condemn in the strongest possible terms the gassing of people, but instead condemns us. What do you make of that?
And says that we are only promoting the violence.
When a former KGB colonel condemns our actions, you know we took the right actions. He's a thug. That's who he is. This is the same government that yesterday, and this is not a joke, look it up on your search engines. This is the same government whose defense ministry spokesman yesterday said it was the British government that executed the chemical weapons attack in Duma last week. The Russians couldn't care less about don't make me laugh, humanitarian exigencies. This is a regime that has propped up Assad, a mass murderer. This is a regime that invaded an independent country, Ukraine, not too long ago. This is a country that supports bad guys everywhere. So if they're clamoring and making a lot of noise, you know Donald Trump took the right decision last night.
But Dr. Gorka, that statement is a perfect example of what President Trump is dealing with when it comes to Vladimir Putin and with Russia, how they continue to lie through their teeth. How does the president move forward here? How does he deal with Russia specifically, other than calling them out last night?
Everything so the president is a patriot. He's the new commander-in-chief, but he's a pragmatist, and he said it. The week he became president or won the election, he gave a press conference in Trump Tower where he said, "In theory, I'd like us to have better relations with Russia. Why? It's a nuclear power. It's got 11 time zones. It's on the UN National Security Council. So it makes sense to have decent relationships with Russia." But even back then, a year and a half ago, he said, if that's not possible, so be it. If they continue to do things that are against international norms, if they exploit and exacerbate unstable conditions around the world, then we can't cooperate with them. And last night we sent a very clear message, and Pete was right. When they didn't respond, when they stayed quiet, you know that they got the message that it is not business as usual, and they can no longer get away with murder like they have in the past.
So, Dr. Gorka, aside from Russia, the message also being sent to Iran and even North Korea.
Absolutely, Griff. Absolutely. Last night was about our response morally to the atrocious weapons that are chemical weapons, but also, more importantly, it's a message to anybody who supports this kind of regime and also may be thinking, like North Korea, may be thinking about their own potential use of weapons of mass destruction. So on all counts, morally, when it comes to our national security, that these weapons should not be used against our people, our citizens, and when it comes to other nations who need to be read the Riot Act, yesterday's intervention served all of those purposes at the same time.
Dr. Gorka, you hate to get political in moments like this, but of course the haters of this president immediately do so, saying he doesn't have the ability or right to strike, he doesn't have a plan. What do you say to their sudden constitutional arguments that this is not an action he could have or should have taken as commander-in-chief?
It's funny. So I didn't hear them criticizing the last president when in one weekend he bombed 7 countries. In one weekend, our forces were engaged in 7 different nations around the world. I didn't hear much protesting from the Democrats when the last president, President Obama, without due process, with a Hellfire missile, killed a U.S. citizen and his son in Yemen. Funny, if the left didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. And the president, according to Article 2, he is absolutely in his constitutional authority to use military force when there is an exigent system. This situation. This isn't a state of war. We're not invading another country. This isn't 1941. There was a threat to the international order, and we had to take action.
Well, and it's important, because you mentioned the Obama years, it's so important to look back on that time in history, because that's ultimately what led us to right here,
yes.
what we are dealing with
yes.
today. So let's just take a look back at some of those moments back with Obama, Rice, and John Kerry.
We have been very clear to the Assad regime. A red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized.
We could cut the deal that got 100% of the declared chemical weapons out of Syria.
We were able to find a solution that actually removed the chemical weapons that were known from Syria in a way that the use of force would never have accomplished.
You heard it there, 100% of the chemical weapons gone.
I give your team full credit, who's working in the background.
We've got some great producers on our team.
The fact that you had that ready is superb. Yeah, I mean, look, that's why we're here. We had 8 years of what? Think about it. We're the last commander-in-chief say we're going to lead from behind. Well, Pete Hegseth, how many people do you know? How many officers lead from behind? It's an oxymoron, right? You can't lead from behind. They talked about strategic patience, which means what? We're not going to do anything. We're going to let other actors act. Well, what happened? We had a Dantean inferno around the world because of that lack of American leadership. We had Russia invade Ukraine. We had the rise of ISIS. We had China building fake islands with military bases on them. We had the JCPOA Iran deal that actually strengthened and emboldened Iran, which is the key sponsor of Assad. That all changed at 12:01 on January the 20th when Donald Trump became president, and now he's fixing all the disastrous policy mistakes made by Kerry, Clinton, and Obama.
Phrase of the morning, Dantean inferno, because of a lack of American leadership. Doctor, thank you very much for your time and insight.
Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right.
Thank you.